But it's wow. It's what you go to these.
Today I'm making friends. I might be about later.
Hello everybody, this is Howard Diallo from the UN Department of Global Communications. I just finished attending the meeting of the NGO Committee on Sustainable Development organized by Margo Lazaro and her co-moderator Dan Perel from the Baha'i International Community. It was really an engaging conversation focused on World Cities Day and you know, the power and the engine of cities in terms of sustainable development and urbanization. Also discussed at the meeting by my colleague Jeffrey Hoffines from the Coalition for the UN We Want was also an overview of the upcoming UN Civil Society Conference that will take place 9 and 10 May in Nairobi, Kenya. It's a conference really to raise the voices of civil society, strategize towards ensuring meaningful engagement and input of the voices of civil society into the Summit of the Future. I look forward to welcoming you to Nairobi, Karibu, Kenya. Thank you.
So we just really want to welcome you all here, and right now there's so much to say about this topic, and we are so deeply dedicated to this day and our mission for sustainable, urban environment. So now I just would like to turn the program over to Dan Perel, who is the UN representative for the Baha'i International Community, and he's also co-chair of the Coalition for the UN We Need. Dan, over to you.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and I have to apologize for a couple of things. One, for the jokes that I will probably make that will be funny, but perhaps more importantly, the fact that I'm trying to manage the Zoom, the shared presentations, moderating, following the chat box, and I have to duck out early because happy Halloween, everybody. There are children at home who beckon. We had, anyway, all that to say, my apologies, but that's life as we are living it today. So yeah, it's really a pleasure to have you all here with us. When I think of the urban community, I think of a place for innovation, a place for community, a place where sort of solutions to the world's problems are able to emerge. But I also think that we have to recall the importance of the rural communities and everything in between. I mean, our food, our history, our communities often derive much of their norms from the rural and sort of bring them into the urban. And I think we have to just find ways for sustainable relationships between those two dimensions of life and not sort of assume an inevitability of everybody moves to the city and that's what the future is going to look like. Now that said, we do know that if population movement continues as it is, then 2/3 of humanity will be in cities before we know it. It's already more than half. And with those dense populations come all sorts of opportunities and challenges. And we'll hear many of the solutions, many of the innovations that are arising from these wonderful corners of the world throughout our day together today. But it also is a space for leadership. Often, the people with whom, the governance institutions with whom we interact most frequently are our local communities. We're very pleased to be joined by a number of representatives from local communities, mayors, and others who are often the first point of contact when it comes to that engagement of sort of the quote average citizen. And hopefully, increasingly, when it comes to the engagement of the UN. The UN is, of course, a member state in space, but we know that there's a lot emerging from cities that is finding its place in the discourse at the UN, including things like voluntary local reviews and all of this at the HLPF. So there's a lot of innovation that's coming. I mean, in terms of countries, there's 193, which means 193 innovators at the level of cities. Thousands, which means thousands of different innovations arising. So I think it's really exciting to be here today and to learn what is emerging, what has taken place over the past year since the last Cities Day, and taking that knowledge forward and to continue advancing together. So, oh yes, I suppose I should mention things like COP28 and then UNEA and the Summit of the Future. All of these these important marks with many of the others, CSW and Commission on Social Development. There are all these important points, and the degree to which we are able to incorporate all the different solutions that we learn from cities and other localities into these sort of established spaces at the UN, I think the more success we'll see emerging from the UN itself. So my apologies, and I'll hand the floor back over to Margaret.
Thank you for saying all of that, and it's so true. We're looking forward to some points along the way into the coming year where we will have opportunities to really support our agendas, certainly with member states and legal agencies, and beyond that, also including the private sector, which we often do in our meetings. We want to be really inclusive, not just talk about it, but be it and show it by inviting different people to be a part of our discourse. So we're really eager to hear from all of our speakers today, and later on we'll have an opportunity, not so much for Q&A, but more about networking with each other and enjoying the refreshments we have here.
This is felt even more strongly in the developing world. We need a new financing framework for sustainable urban development to reverse this trend. We also need to invest in integrated planning and turbocharge our commitment to shelter and housing as a human right. Things might seem impossible, but I am always optimistic. I believe in turning impossible into I am possible. Cities and human settlements, big or small, are our hope. We can unlock the opportunities they offer and create the conditions for growth and recovery. Time and time again, cities have risen to challenge and demonstrated their resilience. Half of the world is now urban. There is no stopping this mega trend. By adapting our cities and finding in them the resources and talent we need, we can upscale the solutions we need to ensure no one and no place is left behind. The price tag for not achieving SDG 11 is too high. Informal settlements would expand in poorer regions, millions would be pushed into extreme poverty and out of their homes, and climate disaster would trigger additional urban crises. It is important to flip the script and change our narrative about cities. The time for action is now. We need to invest in our urban future. We need a new financing framework to unleash the potential of our cities. This World Cities Day, let's pledge to better finance our cities.
We thank the Executive Director of Human Habitat for this message, and also her staff, both here in New York and in Nairobi, for supporting us in our annual World Cities Day observance with this message.
And so now we must make all efforts to at least stay under 2 degrees Celsius of global warming, which was the ambition articulated in the Paris Agreement, although Paris Agreement in and of itself, the first NDC synthesis was about 3.2 degrees of global warming, and the ratchet mechanism and the subsequent NDC synthesis report points out that we are now on track to 2.7 degrees of global warming, provided that everybody implements what they have promised, and then that's a big if. So I just want to congratulate all of us in terms of the significance of this day and the opportunity it presents. The IFC, which is the private sector arm of the World Bank, has estimated that cities just in the emerging markets, not just cities across the world, represent a US $7.6 trillion green investment need between 2023 and 2030 to be sustainable and to present equitable and just transition. So there is a great opportunity, but again, that has to result in meaningful growth, not just mindless urban sprawl, and then that is only possible when countries of the global north and the global south come together, work together, imagine together, and find the resources that can be deployed to make lives better for billions of people worldwide. Thank you.
Providing local public services. We believe that local public services isn't recognized as strongly within the 2030 agenda and within other agendas as being key to achieve basically all of the SDGs. I mean, whether we talk about water provision, education, food, or health, it all ends up falling under, in one way or another, local public services. And well, happy to see here many mayors today. And so this is something that we'll be looking towards the Summit of the Future with a close eye on local public services and on making sure that local governments are seen as political actors, especially in light of this call from the UN Secretary General within the Common Agenda to revitalize multilateralism and make it more networked. And we hope to also see this within the UN's Pact for the Future that will be coming out next September, the Summit of the Future. And the third and final message is maybe more related to finance in relation to some of the focuses of today's session, is that building on the call from the Common Agenda to look at a new way to provide global public goods, we think that is
cities as centers of culture, learning, and economic opportunity. But urbanization has its costs, especially when it happens rapidly. The world's largest cities are also often the most unequal, which is putting the topic of inclusive cities as one of the main pillars of urban sustainable development. To meet the challenges of cities, we need a holistic approach to our societies. One planet, one habitation. We all share our global challenges, and we are all together the sum of the whole society. The cities and the rural areas must be developed together to be able to meet the possibilities with the green transition, new infrastructure, food supply, and development for all. But it is important that within societies, either if it's rural or urban areas, on a solid ground and strengthen from the ground up. We need to start with the people. People can create change for a green, sustainable, inclusive, and democratic society. The power to change and act is local, but in order to create momentum, we need to get people involved. On the local level, we as local political leaders have an advantage. We are close to the people affected by our decisions. Global agendas and their implementation must be driven by the local level with adequate means and competencies in line with the principle.
Well, great to be with you all today. Thank you, Margaret, for that introduction. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, everybody. Happy World Cities Day. Happy Halloween, of course, in the U.S. So I listened in on Mayor Gunnarson's remarks, and I think I was just very impressed that we were spot on, and it turns out that my remarks will build on hers, and it is, mine are what you might expect from a mayor that's been in the business for a while, which is in the vein of the advantages of local government in a time when trust is at a bare minimum, and especially how especially important it is in the context of the world's green transition. So just a little bit about New Bedford. So New Bedford is on the southern coast of Massachusetts. We're about 60 miles south of Boston, about 200 miles east of New York City. It's a city of a little over 100,000, and the metro area that it centers of about 250,000. So by definition, a medium-sized American city. We're best known, I think a lot of folks would know, recognize New Bedford as the setting for Herman Melville's Moby Dick, but in more modern times for America's top commercial fishing port. So, but we're also an older industrial city in the U.S., and as it is in Europe, so it is in the United States, that much of the world's capital in the last 25 years has gravitated to the major metros. Talent has followed, all to the detriment of cities like mine that are situated elsewhere, that are not satellites. And so, for us, it's been an effort in making our way nevertheless to become a more vibrant city, more economically competitive city, and more resilient city. We've worked very hard at making a green transition of sorts. We were one of America's leaders for a while in the development of municipal solar capacity, the retrofitting of municipal buildings through ESCO agreements, as well as the conversion of
350 mayors. This work is really important to me to focus at the level of the city for many of the reasons we've heard today. It's where climate impacts are felt most acutely, and it's also where the benefits can be real and can really draw people into solutions. It's where the majority of emissions are created, over 70%, but it's also where the innovative solutions can be tested and can be scaled. So it's really an exciting place to be working. I think having World Cities Day today and thinking about how we lead up to COP28 and the global stock take showing that we're not on track, and how we can think about driving that conversation of what it looks like to spotlight innovative solutions that are happening at the local level, sometimes with more ambition and greater reductions than national government. So that's really what, as climate mayors, we're going to be working to do, is lift up the importance of subnational leadership and really highlight some of those bright spots as inspiration for further leadership and ambition.
Great initiative. So now we'll pass on over to a new member of the team, Salin Givargis, and my apologies, you will teach me how to properly pronounce her name when you take the floor. He's the president and CEO of SGG Insight. He served as senior appointed leadership post at HUD's Deputy Assistant Secretary General for the Office of International Philanthropic Innovation during the administration of President Barack Obama. You try saying that 10 times fast. You led the United States domestic preparations on a new urban agenda and co-led with the U.S. State Department its delegation in October 2016 to Quito, Ecuador for Habitat 3. And now we're inviting you here to share some important initiatives in the Washington, D.C. area. So over to you, Salin.
About the potential of our cities to produce equitable, inclusive, prosperous, climate-friendly solutions for all. I am going to be focusing on a financing the Sustainable Urban Initiative out of the DC region, as Dan actually mentioned. And as the introduction suggested, it is a springboard from so many of our conversations around negotiating the SDGs, the new urban agenda, and our preparations, as I had the pleasure of leading in the Obama administration as we led on to Habitat 3 during that time period. I think all of us, and there's already been said by the mayors and other leaders, that we recognize the importance of housing and the understanding that housing is a fundamental for economic inclusion and prosperity. The UN reports, even most recently, that we need 1.6 billion people are without adequate housing and basic services here in the United States. We need 7.3 million affordable housing units just for the extremely low income, not to mention the workforce population needs of the country. We face historic levels of housing insecurity, acute and chronic homelessness, and affordability pressures that make the search for solutions incredibly timely and important. And I'm here to talk about one private sector innovation emerging out of the DC region. It was birthed by public, nonprofit, and private sector leaders at the Federal City Council, and it's called the Washington Housing Conservancy. Like so many cities in the world, the DC region is a high-cost market.
You always have so many projects going on, Sandra. Can't keep track of it, but you're busy all the time. You make time for us. Sandra, over to you.
Thank you, Margot.
You know, there are 10,000 cities in the world today, and I think it's just a pleasure to celebrate them, to sort of honor the work they're leading right now, today, to transform into sustainable, even better, more resilient cities. And I think we should acknowledge this transformation that they are leading. You know, they're really reimagining their future. I mean, from climate crisis to transportation issues, housing issues, the impact of artificial intelligence, social and economic inequality. I mean, all of the speakers today have spoken about that. But the truth is that no city is immune from these challenges. Every city is grappling with what to do and how to do it. So I think this transformation is, I think as Dan had mentioned earlier, we're really at a tipping point, and you know, people at this meeting and around the world, I mean, it's time to take action.
Is President and CEO of the Global Partnerships Forum. He's joining us now he's actually been dedicated to financing sustainable development around the world, actually. He's been doing it everywhere. And you've had some interesting encounters recently with the climate agenda and so forth. So we always value your insights and so over to you here. Thank you for that. Thank you.
It's worth it if you really think about it, our lives would be like that. And if we not create sustainable society, sustainable cities, then we have minimal chance of achieving the SDGs. Secretary General said we are quite clear that we need all the entities and we need to create not just a resilient society, not just sustainable, but prosperity for all. And particularly the stages where we can, we're struggling very, very badly. Only 15% of the 169 targets that we achieved today. We are the halfway mark. At least if we were at 40%, we would have said, okay, we made some progress. But if we're in bad shape, we're talking about by the end of 2030, 575 billion people will be living in abject poverty. COVID created a challenge for young kids. The forecast is that at least 84 million children will still be out of school. And we talk about gender equality, women's empowerment. Where do we stand? We calculate that in 300 years after the public transport. And I've known many people who take between 2 and 3 hours each way to public transport. You know, you can't fathom women when they do that. They are CEOs of their own household. They have a job. And then, dare I say, they also look after their spouses. So they carry 3 jobs. And us, we pretend that we are very busy with 1 job. So let me take you to the next thing. So, UN Habitat. You heard a presentation by Mr. Sherry, Executive Director of UN Habitat. UN Habitat is a program called the Urban Agenda Platform. They have an urban agenda. The platform is about putting up there things you can do, things you are doing, to try to inspire others, to actually, it's really what I call an online platform.
And started Recyclable a couple years back, actually 6.5 years back now, because I wanted to build an app to help people recycle better. So what I've done over the years is really take blockchain to track recycling and to essentially use technology to measure the impact in terms of what we've been able to do is use our platform at this point to understand the emissions associated with supply chains, in this use case, plastics recycling, to understand and to show a carbon savings from recycling versus virgin plastics production. Now, when Margot asked me to speak, if I had any words to say about sustainable cities and financing, I was like, yeah, I think so. And the use case that I'd like to highlight today actually is what I think is very, very important when we're talking about cities. Look, cities, I think, are 50% of the world's population now live in cities, and cities are huge emitters of greenhouse gases, right? Responsible for quite a few greenhouse gas emissions in terms of transportation, and energy usage. But I actually want to highlight the other aspect of the greenhouse gas emissions from cities, which is waste. Landfills are a huge point of methane emissions. As many of you might know, and if you don't know, methane is actually more than 80 times more efficient than CO2 as basically a storage for heat.
In a small island in New York City, we had 50% low-income residents and innovations that looked like we had an advanced copy of the SDGs. We were a car-free island, 50% low income, a new way of educating the kids, and free electric buses, and even a pneumatic trash system. Next. Back. Next. I'm sorry.
Hi, can you hear me, everyone in the room? So the slide after this one that you're saying next to is this slide. There's no slide in between. So I'm not sure what you're to.
Okay. After 4 decades, a Silicon City was going to be developed on Roosevelt Island, a new applied science tech campus. This is new thinking about education. Next. So after 40 years, Cornell Tech Campus enhanced education opportunities. It was a laboratory of innovation and commercial incubator, and it enriched the island, the whole city, and the whole world. And this way of new thinking about education is really a new thing. Next. There were classroom buildings, innovation hub, which was really an R&D laboratory, and it will produce new businesses, and they will locate themselves in other places once they develop. And the residential building for the dormitory was in fact a passive house design, which is at the great
that covering green economy, and I know that we're all on timers, so I will be quick but promptly. Inclusive sustainability of cities requires collaborative efforts that are implemented in a timely manner with commitment from all the engaged parties that I've mentioned to attain decentralized community-owned city and future that will build support and solidarity for local struggles, empower local leaderships, and immerse activities into grassroots work that help build cities from the ground up. But those are a lot of hot words that I've used. How do we actually realize this? A few actions that I helped implement in my city of Lusaka and other cities like Muranganyama, Kitwe, Ndola on the Copper Belt can be replicated, such as inclusivity, acknowledging all inhabitants of the city, giving them a sense of belonging and responsibility by including them in crucial decision-making processes. Allow data to work for you when you're practicing inclusivity. A practical way that we did this in Zambia was when the pandemic COVID-19 hit us, and the World Health Organization was putting out all these messages, really powerful information, useful as well in English. Now in Zambia and in Lusaka alone, we have over 72 spoken languages, and the messages were not getting to the right people, to the communities in time. And so one of the things that I did was work with Ministry of Health Zambia and World Health Organization to translate a lot of these messages into local languages and languages that were spoken in the city of Lusaka. And we allowed data to work for us to create inclusivity. Another thing is creating financing through local social enterprise.
From its contribution to solve these local and global issues. The answer is simple, and to this end, we support the success of the 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals to leave no one behind by the year 2030. At the Executive Leadership Development Council, our main focus of action is supporting communities. We have established partnerships with national and local leaders, including the education and health sectors, that voice opportunities for collaboration and cooperation with a shared vision to develop sustainable solutions that bring the necessary elements to create the foundations for success throughout communities. With a mission to elevate health and education with contributions for all people. We are galvanizing communities and industries to create ecosystems with collaborative environments that will influence change globally. In addition, we equip communities with resources and personnel to help establish the experiences to support our vision, which addresses the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, in particular SDG 3, good health, and SDG 4, quality education, and SDG 11 for sustainable cities and communities. Locally, we have partnered with over 100 learning institutions, educational leaders, parents, teachers to create quality education. We equip community leaders with resources and personnel to help establish the experiences and advantages our people need to develop in rural areas of education. This includes teacher and parent development and training so that our children may have the best possible experiences and environments. Through our partnerships, we have leveraged over $15 million that we have contributed to the creation of libraries, new gyms, kitchens.
The next advisory group joining us this year, and she's also a member of our NGO Committee, executive board.
Okay, thank you so much. Yes, and I want to thank you, Margot, and I'm sorry Dan has left, but in absentia, and Mark and all the others that have spoken today, I really appreciate it. I'm going to talk a little bit about reducing risk and losses and saving lives in cities that are affected by climate-related disasters. We've heard a little bit about this already today, and resilience. And we know that population is over half of the world's population are living in cities, and we're seeing that climate-related disasters are exacerbated in cities due to lack of or outdated urban infrastructure, density, growing unpredictability, and lack of preparedness, which we've heard a little bit about. So I'm going to really focus my remarks around actual examples of where we've seen reducing disaster risk and helping ensuring that we meet the goals of the 2030 Agenda and the Spirit of World Cities Day. And I know that there are over 10,000 cities, as Sandra has noted, and a number of them don't actually implement the strategies that they have for resilience, but I'm going to share a few. New York City and San Francisco have implemented comprehensive disaster risk reduction strategies, including measures that
She's the acting director for the Urban Economy Forum, and she'd like to ask you to share her insights.
Thank you, Margot, and good afternoon, everyone. To celebrate and promote cities, today I will speak about community development, financial institutions, CDFIs. While the financial sector has an important role to play, but hesitates to invest in poor neighborhoods, the CDFIs are equipped to develop financial products and extension of credit with conditions to meet Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, and Environmental Social Governance, ESGs. When did the CDFIs industry start? CDFIs were created after the Great Depression worldwide, specifically in the most developed countries. Their main goal was to continue to assist in economic growth and provide opportunities to distressed communities. They are linked to federal funds and city revenue. In the US, this fund is called the City Block Development Grant, CDBG. The city grants these funds with its development plans to uplift poor neighborhoods, promote MSMEs, SDGs, and ESGs. Access to CDBG funds require training and direct technical assistance. CDFI training programs offer tailored capacity building plans to meet
governments on the margins of UN Habitat Assembly this last June in Nairobi. So there are many synergies to be explored and further developed between civil society and local authorities as we prepare for the Summit of the Future. The Pact for the Future of Humanity, unanimously adopted by the UCLG World Congress in October 2022, articulates 30 key commitments that cities and local governments have made to people, planet, and government, showcasing the strength of the transformative global municipal movement. UCLG identified 4 key entry points whereby local governments and CSO partners can contribute to the Summit of the Future that include reclaiming the commons, redefining finances, regaining trust, and rebuilding governance architecture. So the UCLG Pact for the Future served as a model for the development of our own People's Pact for the Future, to hold not only member states, but ourselves accountable to the promises we make in partnership with others. As a civil society declaration of both principles and advocacy designed to feed into the General Assembly's preparatory negotiations on the intergovernmental UN Pact for the Future and related Summit of the Future outcome documents to begin this fall. Now, last Friday, actually here in this conference room, as Jim will recall, he was among us, UNDGC brought together CSO partners, UN agencies, and donors for the first planning meeting in support of this need.
All the stakeholders, like CSOs, NGOs, and academia and planning center, in order to move from these goals to those. So that's what I learned from him, and that's why I think on today's meeting today, which builds on the main part of the leaders and the regional leaders, as well as civil society's voice, which can fulfill the success of the SDGs as well as the OECD. In that sense, I thank you for your invitation.
It's our pleasure, and thank you. And we have opted to work with you. It's quite an incredible person here at the UN, and always held space for civil society. And we really, we just really want to make sure we acknowledge you and thank you for also some work that you're doing. Howard Allen, Chief of the Civil Society, I'm probably going to get wrong. Howard, here with us.
Well, thank you, Margot. I would say Margot's on my mom's payroll, so this is really sad. But it's a pleasure to always be here. I mean, I have friends and family. I see Cheryl, I see Andres back there, Gail was here, Jack, all the strong civil society allies that we have. Jack really said most of what needs to be said about the UN Civil Society Conference. I mean, what I can say is that I'm very excited that this is happening. Again, Jim Dexter flagging Secretary Ban Ki-moon. I remember how supportive he was for the 2017 conference when we were in Gyeongju, South Korea, Tanzania. It was really fantastic. After that, we were in Salt Lake City. So I'm excited, not as Hawa Diallo at the UN, but Hawa as a super African woman, because this is the first conference that we will host in Africa, in Nairobi. Kenya. So we're looking forward. I think for TGC, we are looking forward to really working with our strong partners we've had in the past, but also also opening up and having a wider scope of civil society across the UN system. You know, the DGC, along with other UN agencies, have been working aligned with the Secretary General's Our Common Agenda, where we've been working to have a civil society focal points network to really make sure we're coordinated in terms of, you know, ensuring for meaningful engagement of civil society across the UN system. So we look to welcome our family and friends, but also new voices, especially marginalized, unseen, unheard voices, you know, across the globe. So I'm really excited, and thank you, Jeff, for mentioning December 12th, mark your calendar. 2 big things will happen. We'll have the town hall, which will be split into half, as you said. The first one will be the civil society interaction with the President of the General Assembly, which the DGC has been managing. And then we'll have the second half of the conference, so please be there, you know, state your mark, get involved in the planning process, and let's do this. Thank you so much.
Everything related to money and how we put money to work to sustainable solutions where they're needed. My core focus is the Global South, specifically Africa. What we do is we figure out the tools in place to achieve all of these things that we're talking about, which is building more sustainable cities and trying to navigate the boundaries that are latest. I was in a day-long meeting yesterday with somebody from the Central African Republic, and unfortunately, Mr. Biden has now excluded the Central African Republic from the board, so that was a waste of my day. So, but it's unfortunately one of the issues that we as the private sector and finances face is this constantly changing legislative and government environment. I think that's one of the practical problems of getting funding, because if you're doing some of these smart cities where you're talking 5, 10, 15, 20-year investment programs, you cannot work in an environment where the legislation is generally given time to elections because we need returns on investment. Which means we pass that cost on to the project, which is why the cost of doing projects, particularly so high. We're working on this.
Sherry, thank you. It's this is an event. This is not a meeting. Just want to be clear. I don't do minutes, but we're going to do other kinds of meetings coming up. Right now, it's important to show how much there is to be a part of connecting. We need to connect, and as we did today. So we appreciate Dan, her membership of Vanuatu. We do hope that Asante is going to soon, and also Ambassador Tevi, and we want to show what other our urban cluster team, and also the NGO Committee is assisting with that development as well. We do have a video from Adam, and I would like to show it, so as we go out, and if you would like to, we can put the video on now, and it's a short one, we put the amount of food put on the position in Monday for zero apartment conditions. Please all of them enjoy the refreshments that are here, and I do have to contact you.